There's a particular kind of peace that only comes with a sleepy sunrise, the smell of fresh coffee, and the sound of your dog's paws patting across the kitchen floor. That was my morning ritual with Baxter. Ever since my wife passed, he'd been the one constant. He's the kind of golden retriever that people stop their cars to compliment. Big, fluffy, gentle as a spring breeze. That morning was like any other. I sipped my coffee on the porch, Baxter at my feet, when I noticed the envelope, perfectly centered on the welcome mat like a little landmine of bureaucracy. Willow Haven Homeowners Association. Notice of violation. I frowned. I'd only been in the neighborhood a few weeks, still unpacking boxes. My lawn was mowed, my trash cans tucked away. What now? I opened it. Read the first few lines, then read them again. Per Article 4, Section 12 of the Willow Haven Residential Agreement, household pets must not exceed 45 pounds in weight. Your dog, as observed by HOA security personnel, is estimated to exceed this limit. Please arrange for rehoming within 14 days to avoid fines of $150 per day. I nearly choked on my coffee. Rehome him? I looked down at Baxter. He wagged his tail and licked my hand, completely oblivious to the war crimes he was apparently committing by existing in his 70-pound golden-furred glory. I flipped the letter over, thinking maybe this was a mistake. Maybe there was a phone number, a real human I could talk to. Instead, there was a QR code labeled Compliance Portal. It didn't even have a name, no board member signature, just a seal that looked like a knockoff government logo and a warning that non-compliance will result in legal action. Now, I'm no stranger to rules. I spent over 2 decades in the Army. Rules keep people safe. But this was something else. This was a neighborhood club run by power-hungry busybodies with too much time and not enough empathy. I wasn't about to let them bully me out of my best friend. So I did what any reasonable, mildly infuriated man would do. I went straight to the next HOA meeting. They held it every other Wednesday in the community clubhouse, a renovated barn with fake colonial windows and overpriced cupcakes. I walked in dressed in a buttoned-up shirt that still had my wife's perfume faintly lingering in the collar and took a seat in the back. That's when I met Karen Faulkner, president of the HOA. Late 50s, pearl earrings, clipboard surgically attached to her arm. She had that tight-lipped smile like she'd rather be inspecting a guest bathroom than speaking to another human. When public comments opened, I stood. I'm Michael Carter, new resident on Sycamore Lane. I received a letter about my dog Baxter being in violation of the weight limit. I'd like to request an exemption. Karen didn't blink. Mr. Carter, the pet policy is clearly outlined in the Willow Haven Charter. No animal over 45 pounds. The board voted on it last year, and it passed unanimously. But he's not dangerous, I said. He's better behaved than most people. Doesn't bark, doesn't dig, doesn't even shed that much. He's a trained therapy dog, for God's sake. She gave me the kind of look you reserve for children smearing peanut butter on walls. This is not a matter of behavior. It's about uniformity. Rules are what make Willow Haven a safe and beautiful place to live. If we start making exceptions, where does it end? Rottweilers? Pit bulls? There were a few nods from the board members. A couple residents avoided eye contact. Baxter is my family, I said quietly. He helped me survive after my wife passed. You're asking me to give up the only reason I get out of bed in the morning. Karen pursed her lips. You have 11 days remaining, Mr. Carter. Please be sure to use the compliance portal. Meeting adjourned. I left the clubhouse in a daze. Baxter was waiting in the truck, tail thumping happily against the seat. I sat there for a long time, just watching him, his head cocked sideways like he could tell something was wrong. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about dogs. This wasn't even about rules. It was about control. Enforcing sameness. Making sure no one stood out. Not even a golden retriever who just wanted to nap in the sun. I wasn't going to roll over. But I didn't know yet how far they were willing to go. Not until the day Baxter vanished, and that was when the gloves came off. The days after that meeting felt like waiting for a storm you can't stop. One that's coming straight for you, no matter how nice your porch looks. I tried to enjoy the little things, morning walks with Baxter, throwing the tennis ball in the backyard, sitting on the swing with my coffee while he lay at my feet, warm and steady. But I couldn't ignore the ticking clock. Every day I got another reminder, a yellow tag stuck on my mailbox, an email warning of non-compliance, a phone call from a number with no caller ID that played a pre-recorded message about escalating fees. And then came the second letter, printed on heavy cardstock like a wedding invite. Final notice. Violation continued. Daily fines begin in 48 hours. Failure to comply may result in legal lien placement on property and/or forced removal of offending animal per Section 9. Forced removal, like Baxter, was a broken appliance. I took the letter and walked to Karen Faulkner's house. Her lawn looked like it had been measured with a ruler and threatened at gunpoint. She was trimming rose bushes in a wide-brimmed sun hat, like a villain in a Southern Gothic play. I didn't raise my voice, didn't curse. I just handed her the letter. "This is harassment," I said. Karen smiled like I had offered her a coupon for beige paint. "It's enforcement, Mr. Carter. Your refusal to comply affects the entire neighborhood." "Is this really about my dog?" I asked. "Or is this about you needing to feel powerful?" That smile didn't move. "You have 48 hours. I suggest you use them wisely." I left her driveway feeling like I needed a shower, but what hurt more was the silence from everyone else. I had seen them watch from their windows. I'd gotten a few whispered, "We're so sorries," from dog walkers on the trail. But no one stood up. No one pushed back. And I get it. Fear is contagious. But I was getting tired of being the only one coughing. So I did what I could. I called the number on the first violation letter, got bounced between 3 compliance specialists, before someone named Bryce told me that if I submitted a vet's documentation verifying Baxter's weight, they might consider an appeal. I had the records sent within the hour. 3 days passed. No reply. On the 4th day, I got a brief email. "Your appeal has been reviewed and denied. The dog in question is not in compliance with community standards. Further infractions may result in HOA intervention." That phrase stuck with me. HOA intervention. They made it sound like a tactical raid. The next HOA meeting was that Wednesday. I wasn't planning on going. I was too tired, too angry, too disillusioned. But something in me, maybe that old military itch that refuses to quit, said, "No, you show up." So I did. Same clubhouse, same terrible coffee, same board of smug faces sitting at the folding table like they were planning a space mission. Karen was front and center, flipping through papers like she was auditioning for a role as Satan's receptionist. When public comments opened, I walked to the mic. "I just want to say this one thing," I began. "You all know I served 22 years in the Army. I've followed rules most of my life. But this isn't about rules. It's about cruelty. My dog, who's done nothing wrong, is being treated like a threat because of some arbitrary number you made up." I looked around the room. Most people looked down. One guy shifted uncomfortably in his seat. A younger couple in the back whispered something to each other. "Karen," I said directly, "do you understand what it means to come home after burying your wife and have one thing keeping you sane? Just one. And now you're trying to take that too?" Karen kept that same frozen expression. "Mr. Carter, this forum is not for personal storytelling. If you have a formal motion, please submit it through the online portal." That was it. I didn't yell. I didn't flip a table. But something inside me broke. Not in the shattered, defeated kind of way. In the snapped rope, falling weight, nothing left to lose kind of way. Because as I stood there, I realized something chilling. They weren't going to stop. 3 days later, Baxter vanished. I'd gone to the grocery store for 20 minutes, just long enough to grab bread, milk, and some apples. When I came back, the side gate was open. No barking, no signs of a struggle, just silence. I ran through the house like a lunatic, checked under beds, behind doors. Every stupid place I knew he wouldn't be. The backyard was spotless, too spotless. No paw prints, no fur. And when I checked the cameras, offline. All of them. Disabled through the WILLOW Haven Smart Home Integration System, the one every new resident is forced to use to keep the neighborhood secure. I opened the app. It showed a message. System access temporarily suspended due to network maintenance. Please contact your HOA representative. I nearly threw my phone across the room. I called animal control, the local shelters, every vet within 10 miles. No one had seen him. No recent pickups. No found retrievers. I went door to door. Half the neighbors looked guilty. Some avoided me entirely. But one, an older woman named June, with a walker and a tiny Yorkie, opened her door just wide enough to whisper, "You're not the first." "What?" She shook her head. 3 other dogs, last year, all over the weight limit. They just disappeared. That was when it all crystallized. This wasn't just me. This was something bigger. Something coordinated. And for the first time since I moved in, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I was going to burn it all down. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Baxter's empty dog bed in the corner. His leash still hung by the door. His food bowl sat full in the kitchen. And that silence, that sickening, unnatural silence, echoed louder than any bark ever could. It wasn't like him to run. And even if he had, he wore a collar with a GPS tag. But when I opened the tracking app, it showed nothing. No pings, no signal. Just a grayed-out icon labeled "Location unavailable." The tag was gone. That's when I knew, really knew, they'd taken him. Not someone. Them. The first thing I did was call the police. Big mistake. A young officer came out 2 hours later, probably mid-20s. Fresh out of academy, judging by the nervous energy and inability to make eye contact. I walked him through it all. The letter, the meetings, the threats, the camera shutdown, the GPS tag failure, Baxter vanishing without a trace. I laid it out with military precision, facts in order. He scribbled a few notes on his pad, then asked, "So, is it possible the dog just ran off?" I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "He's trained. Retired therapy dog. That gate was latched. The cameras were working, until they weren't. He didn't run off." "Well, sir, without signs of forced entry or a witness." I cut him off. "Check the HOA's digital system. The neighborhood runs off their servers. Cameras, door access, smart locks. They disabled it remotely. That's how they got in." He blinked. "Sir, are you saying the Homeowners Association kidnapped your dog?" "Yes," I said, flat, cold. He scribbled something quickly, then cleared his throat. "We'll file a report. Let us know if he turns up." That was it. No warrant, no tech team, just a polite escort off the edge of sanity. I was angry. But more than that, I was done waiting for anyone else to fix this. So I did what I've always done when someone thinks I'm too old, too soft, or too broken to fight back. I got to work. First, the tech. When I moved in, the HOA required all residents to use the WILLOW Haven Smart System, their version of a security suite. It controlled everything from door locks to street-facing cameras. Marketed as a quote, community-wide safety network, it came pre-installed and remotely managed by their contracted IT firm, which was just a shell company run by Karen's nephew. I found that out 2 weeks after moving in and made a mental note to dig deeper. Now I had a reason. I booted up my old laptop, the one I'd used during my contracting days. Outdated, dusty, but loaded with more backdoor tools than a teenager's hacked Xbox. Took me a few hours, a lot of coffee, and one very sketchy Russian forum, but I cracked their access panel, and what I found was horrifying. Every resident's camera feed, live and recorded, was routed through a central hub, hosted on a local server in the clubhouse basement. And yes, there was footage. Not just mine, dozens of homes. Archived clips going back months, all tagged, time-stamped, cataloged. They were watching us. I scanned through my own feed. Sure enough, at exactly 2:17 p.m. the day Baxter vanished, the feed cut to black. Just before that, movement in the alley. A white, unmarked van pulled up beside my back fence. A figure in a black polo and cargo pants, embroidered with a small Willow Haven logo, jumped the gate. 2 minutes later, he climbed back over, carrying Baxter. My hands shook as I watched the footage again. I felt a sick mix of grief, rage, and something colder. A calculation, because now I had proof. Real, time-stamped, undeniable evidence of what they'd done. And it wasn't just Baxter. I scanned the tags on the server. Multiple clips labeled pet enforcement, all within the past year, all tied to addresses flagged for size noncompliance or breed unsuitability. One file showed a pit bull being dragged from a porch while the owner screamed inside. Another showed a German shepherd lured into a truck with a treat. All of it was done quietly, efficiently, like black bag operations run in the dead of night. But the worst one was labeled Test Case McMillan. The footage was grainy, but you could see it clear as day. A golden retriever, big, fluffy, elderly, carried out in the same van. That dog had been taken 6 months ago. I cross-referenced the name with the neighborhood roster. The McMillans had moved out 4 months back. Their house was currently listed as available for new buyers, pet-free. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. So I did the only thing I could. I started documenting everything. I copied the server contents to a hidden drive. Backups, screenshots, full video downloads. I made a list of every household targeted, cross-referenced it with HOA violation records, which I pulled from their internal portal using admin-level access, and began mapping it out. This was no neighborhood nuisance. This was systematic theft. And then something unexpected happened. People started talking. Word got around that I was asking questions, that I had seen something. First, it was hushed hellos from neighbors who used to avoid me. Then it was side conversations on the sidewalk. And finally, one by one, they started knocking on my door. June came back, the woman with the Yorkie. She brought a photo of her sister's lab, Molly, who vanished last October after a warning letter. Then came Alex and Priya, young couple with a husky named Kona. Got fined into surrendering her to a shelter. And finally, Linda, former HOA secretary, recently resigned. She brought me the binder. An actual binder labeled Internal Pet Enforcement, Confidential, Meeting Minutes, Approval Forms, Reimbursement Logs for Animal Transport Expenses. It was all there. The conspiracy, the cover-up, the enforcers hired through volunteer security channels, the payments, the policies Karen had written herself under the guise of home standard preservation. It wasn't just corruption, it was criminal. That night, I sat on my porch with the binder in my lap and a flash drive around my neck like a dog tag. Baxter's collar still sat in my hand. I wasn't broken anymore. I was focused. They'd taken my dog. Now I was going to take everything they had. The binder was a gold mine. But the code was the nuclear option. I'd seen enough in my time to know, if you really want to bring down a corrupt organization, don't scream in the town square. Show receipts. And the best receipts are the ones they never thought anyone could find. I went back into the HOA's central system, this time with intent, not just to look, but to dig deep. Every file, every document, every shredded breadcrumb they'd carelessly left behind. The clubhouse basement server was shockingly vulnerable. They had no firewall beyond a generic password. WILLOW 123. I laughed out loud when I cracked it. These people spent more time debating mailbox colors than securing their entire digital infrastructure. Inside the system, I found subfolders labeled Compliance Enforcement, Member Reporting, and, most chilling of all, Special Circumstances. That's where the real dirt lived. Special circumstances included internal memos, all written in the prim, passive-aggressive language of suburban dictatorship. Resident McMillan has failed to comply despite multiple notices. Suggests initiating pet relocation protocol. Requesting board approval for off-site transfer by volunteer enforcement, ETA, 3 days. Carter, Michael, Sycamore Lane, showing signs of resistance. Consideration for disruptive resident status. Possible escalation to full surveillance lockdown. They had a category for people like me. Disruptive resident. They'd flagged my house in red, logged my visit to Karen's home, logged my speech at the meeting, logged my vet appeal, and then they logged the successful resolution of violation number 092 pet removal. Just like that. Successful resolution. My chest tightened as I stared at the words. These people thought they were untouchable. They weren't. I started working the network. The drive had data, but I needed reach. So I reconnected with an old contact from my Army intelligence days. Name's Ray, former cyber warfare analyst, now lives off-grid in Montana with 6 goats and a bitter grudge against anyone who uses the phrase terms of service. I sent him the raw data. Videos, internal emails, digital records. He called me 30 minutes later, laughing so hard he had to hang up and call back. "You weren't kidding, Mike," he said. "This HOA, it's like a drunk toddler tried to play Big Brother. They took my dog Ray." "Okay," he said, voice suddenly serious. "Then let's make them wish they'd stuck to planting petunias." We launched a 2-pronged plan. Ray handled the back end, gathering metadata, timestamps, IP logs, tying every action to individual board members. I handled the front end, printing off hard copies, organizing evidence, reaching out to neighbors, and building a list of known victims. Turns out, once you scratch the surface, people are desperate to talk. I heard stories that made my stomach turn. A widow fined into giving up her emotional support cat. A disabled vet whose service animal was removed during a, quote, routine wellness check. A young couple told their new puppy would grow too large and was proactively non-compliant. And every time someone resisted, their cameras glitched. Their keycard stopped working. Their system updated. This wasn't enforcement. This was psychological warfare in beige cardigans. Then came the breakthrough. Ray cracked the connection between the HOA's enforcement team and a third-party contractor, a fake security company called Neighborhood Asset Compliance, LLC. Guess who owned it? Karen Faulkner's cousin, listed as CEO. Her nephew? Chief of Technology, the same one who ran the Willow Haven smart system. It was all a closed loop. The HOA passed rules, enforced them through their own contractors, and funneled HOA dues into payments for these services. All off the books. All under the radar. All profitable. I found payment records labeled innocently as Community Pet Assistance, Animal Welfare Compliance, Resident Behavior Adjustment Services. And those unmarked vans? Registered to a holding company under the same LLC, based in a strip mall 2 towns over. Ray dug deeper and pulled exact GPS logs of their movements on the day Baxter disappeared. One van left Willow Haven at 2:32 p.m., traveled 23 miles, and parked behind a rural animal shelter. I called that shelter. They had a golden retriever. No microchip, no collar, just brought in by a good Samaritan. I didn't drive. I flew. When I got there, Baxter was curled in the corner of a metal crate, looking smaller than I remembered. His fur was dirty. He'd lost weight. But when he saw me, his ears perked, and that tail started thumping like a war drum. I knelt beside the cage. "Hey, buddy," I whispered. "I told you I'd come." He pressed his head against the bars. I signed the release papers with shaking hands, eyes burning as I held him for the first time in days. They tried to erase him, strip away everything he meant to me. They had a category for people like me. Disruptive resident. They'd flagged my house in red, logged my visit to Karen's home, logged my speech at the meeting, logged my vet appeal, and then they logged the successful resolution of violation number 092 pet removal. Just like that. Successful resolution. My chest tightened as I stared at the words. These people thought they were untouchable. They weren't. I started working the network. The drive had data. But I needed reach. So I reconnected with an old contact from my Army intelligence days. Name's Ray. Former cyber warfare analyst. Now lives off-grid in Montana with 6 goats and a bitter grudge against anyone who uses the phrase terms of service. I sent him the raw data. Videos, internal emails, digital records. He called me 30 minutes later, laughing so hard he had to hang up and call back. "You weren't kidding, Mike," he said. "This HOA? It's like a drunk toddler tried to play Big Brother. They took my dog, Ray." "Okay," he said, voice suddenly serious. "Then let's make them wish they'd stuck to planting petunias." We launched a 2-pronged plan. Ray handled the back end, gathering metadata, timestamps, IP logs, tying every action to individual board members. I handled the front end, printing off hard copies, organizing evidence, reaching out to neighbors, and building a list of known victims. Turns out, once you scratch the surface, people are desperate to talk. I heard stories that made my stomach turn. A widow fined into giving up her emotional support cat. A disabled vet whose service animal was removed during a quote, routine wellness check. A young couple told their new puppy would grow too large and was proactively non-compliant. And every time someone resisted, their cameras glitched, their keycards stopped working, their system updated. This wasn't enforcement. This was psychological warfare in beige cardigans. Then came the breakthrough. Ray cracked the connection between the HOA's enforcement team and a third-party contractor, a fake security company called Neighborhood Asset Compliance, LLC. Guess who owned it? Karen Faulkner's cousin listed as CEO. Her nephew? Chief of Technology, the same one who ran the Willow Haven smart system. It was all a closed loop. The HOA passed rules, enforced them through their own contractors, and funneled HOA dues into payments for these services, all off the books, all under the radar, all profitable. I found payment records labeled innocently as Community Pet Assistance, Animal Welfare Compliance, Resident Behavior Adjustment Services, and those unmarked vans? Registered to a holding company under the same LLC, based in a strip mall 2 towns over. Ray dug deeper and pulled exact GPS logs of their movements on the day Baxter disappeared. One van left Willow Haven at 2:32 p.m., traveled 23 miles, and parked behind a rural animal shelter. I called that shelter. They had a golden retriever. No microchip. No collar. Just brought in by a good Samaritan. I didn't drive. I flew. When I got there, Baxter was curled in the corner of a metal crate, looking smaller than I remembered. His fur was dirty. He'd lost weight, but when he saw me, his ears perked, and that tail started thumping like a war drum. I knelt beside the cage. "Hey, buddy," I whispered. "I told you I'd come." He pressed his head against the bars. I signed the release papers with shaking hands, eyes burning as I held him for the first time in days. They'd tried to erase him, strip away everything he meant to me. I plugged a flash drive into the projector. The first clip played, grainy security footage of Baxter being taken from my yard. The room went dead silent. Then came the audio files. HOA board meeting minutes where Karen casually discussed acceptable attrition of non-compliant pets. Payment records showing HOA dues being funneled into the enforcement company she and her family ran. Each file hit harder than the last. But the moment that broke them, that truly shattered the facade, was when I played a video of Linda, the former board secretary, reading aloud a policy Karen had pushed for but never filed legally, the proactive pet removal clause. "Karen never submitted this for a vote," Linda said on video. "She wrote it herself and told us it was already approved. I didn't know. I didn't know what she was doing with it." The room erupted. Shouts. Boos. One guy in the front row demanded to know where his cat had gone. Another screamed that he'd been fined into surrendering his pit bull. Karen stood up, red-faced and trembling. "This is a smear campaign. That footage is fake. You're all being manipulated by a man with a vendetta." "Vendetta?" I laughed. "You think this is about revenge?" "No, this is about justice." I turned to the crowd. This woman used her position to terrorize families, to steal pets, to weaponize policy. And when we objected, she called us disruptive. I paused, looked her dead in the eye. "Well, guess what, Karen? The whole neighborhood is disrupted now." The vote to remove the board wasn't just unanimous. It was cheered. Someone popped open a soda like we were at a graduation. One guy actually brought a "You're fired" sign and waved it like a flag. Karen tried to leave, but two sheriff's deputies, who I'd tipped off ahead of time, stopped her at the door. The reporter caught it all. Her mic picked up every word as the deputies handed her a warrant to seize HOA financial records, issued by the state attorney general's office based on the evidence we'd sent. Karen's final words? "This is a misunderstanding. I was protecting the community." Yeah, Karen. Like a fox protects the henhouse. The fallout was fast. The HOA was dissolved within the month. Karen and 3 board members were arrested and charged with fraud, theft, and conspiracy. The Neighborhood Asset Compliance, LLC, was exposed as a front for Karen's relatives and shut down by the state. Every family that lost a pet received a formal apology and a check from the HOA's leftover funds. New bylaws were written by a temporary resident-led council with no animal restrictions whatsoever. And Baxter? Baxter was made the official mascot of the neighborhood's Reformed Association. They gave him a little sash at the 4th of July block party that said, "First dog of Willow Haven." He wore it with pride. And me? I still sit on my porch every morning with my coffee. Baxter lies at my feet, right where he belongs. Sometimes neighbors stop by. Sometimes they don't. But either way, the air feels different now. Lighter. Freer. Because the kingdom fell. And all it took was one man, one dog, and a flash drive full of truth. The house felt different the day after it all went down, like it could breathe again. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't checking the windows every 5 minutes or pacing the floor like a soldier waiting for orders. No more threats in the mailbox. No fake notices. No HOA trolls with their smug clipboards prowling the sidewalk like mall cops on a power trip. It was quiet, but the good kind of quiet. The kind of quiet where peace lives. And in the middle of that stillness, stretched across my worn leather recliner with his belly in the air and his tongue flopped sideways, was Baxter, home. It took a few days for everything to settle. The former HOA board was too busy lawyering up to launch any kind of retaliation. Karen, last I heard, had pled not guilty and was already trying to claim her arrest was politically motivated. Her lawyer compared her to a, quote, community leader unfairly maligned by digital vigilantes. Right, and I'm the Pope. The AG's office didn't buy it either. The case had teeth, and thanks to Ray's forensic work and Linda's whistleblower testimony, it wasn't just an HOA scandal. It was fraud, embezzlement, unauthorized surveillance, illegal property entry, even a potential animal cruelty charge, depending on how many of the missing pets could be accounted for. The news kept digging. By the end of the week, Willow Haven was on the 6 o'clock broadcast. My front porch interview with Baxter, curled loyally at my feet, aired right after a story about a stolen tractor in Kansas. Not exactly prime time, but I'll take it. The reporter asked, "Mr. Carter, what would you say to the people who think this was just about a dog?" I looked at the camera and said, "It was about a dog." And that's exactly why it mattered. The new neighborhood council held its first meeting a few weeks later. No dress code. No rigid seating chart. Just people in lawn chairs with lemonade and folding fans, passing around copies of the new bylaws. Linda chaired the committee. Apparently, she dusted off her old accounting background and volunteered to handle transparency reports. The best part? They renamed the clubhouse. It's now called the Baxter Center. Yeah, my dog has a building named after him. There's a little brass plaque by the door that reads, "In honor of the companions who made us feel at home, even when others wouldn't." I didn't cry. Not really. Just had something in my eye. Baxter bounced back quickly. His appetite returned. His energy picked up. Within a week, he was sprinting after tennis balls like he hadn't spent days locked in a shelter crate. The vet gave him a clean bill of health and slipped him a few extra treats during his checkup. "He's a lucky dog," she said. I just nodded. "Actually," I told her, "I think I'm the lucky one." Life in Willow Haven isn't perfect. The lawns are still too manicured. The mailboxes still match. There's a guy 3 houses down who insists on hosting karaoke every Friday and has a love affair with 80s hair metal. But for the first time, people wave with more than just passive-aggressive politeness. They say hello, they talk, they ask questions. The fear's gone. Baxter and I started walking the neighborhood again, just like before. But now, people stop us. Kids pet him. One little girl even drew a picture of him with a superhero cape and gave it to me at the community barbecue. "He saved our dogs," she said. "He's like a fluffy Batman." I hung it on the fridge. The HOA doesn't exist anymore. What replaced it is more like a neighborhood council. Volunteer-based. Rotating members. No fines. No surveillance. No threats about mailbox flags or aesthetic disruptions. And definitely no rules about dog weight. We even hosted a Welcome Back Baxter party in the park. Balloons. Dog treats. One lady brought custom cupcakes with little paw prints on them. Baxter got his own cake shaped like a bone. He licked it clean in one go. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just rolled over. If I'd rehomed him. If I'd listened to the people who said, "It's just the rules, Mike." If I'd stayed quiet. But I didn't. Because the day they came for Baxter was the day I remembered something important. You don't get to decide what makes a home. Not with fines, not with bylaws, not with threats scrawled in Times New Roman on overpriced letterhead. Baxter was my home. Still is. And now, thanks to him, this neighborhood finally feels like one too. So when people ask what happened, the new folks moving in who've heard whispers about the dog guy or the great HOA showdown, I tell them this. It started with a letter. It ended with a dog. And somewhere in the middle, we all remembered what it means to fight for the things that truly matter. Not perfection, not compliance, but love, loyalty, and the kind of freedom that lets a man and his dog sit on a porch without fear. Baxter's curled up next to me now, snoring softly. And me? I'm just waiting for the next HOA to try something. I dare them.